Hi everybody, here we are back in my workshop. It's 4 o'clock now with you, but this is a recorded video, so not a live one today. I'm just taking a few days off, bit of R&R, that sort of thing. And today is going to be the start of our bowl turning section, or I'm going to do a series of these. This is going to be a bowl if you've just got your first lathe, the first bowl that you're going to do. We're going to make it really simple. We're going to create a recess and expand our jaws into it. And then the next series of bowls, we're going to make them slightly different, a little bit more difficult, I guess. We're going to make a foot that we can take away. We're going to do a platter. We're going to introduce some airbrushing, all those sorts of things. But this is your basic first bowl you've ever turned. Okay. Now the timber here is a bit of sapele. And it's a fairly dusty timber, so there's very likely that I'm going to wear my my face shield with air, so my airflow. And we're going to turn the outside first. I'm going to use the C jaws, so the C jaws in this SK114, and I'm going to measure that. I'm going to measure that in a moment with the speed sizer as well. I've been jabbering on about this speed sizer for weeks now. It's a fairly new tool in my workshop, but it's just been so handy. Now you can scribe with this, and if you want to at this point, but I tend to just take the measurement with my dividers and then scribe live with the bowl turning. So that's the speed size, a really useful bit of kit. So we know what we're going to use. I've mounted already the faceplate on the bowl. Now it's your choice. You can use a faceplate, you can use a faceplate ring, you can use a screw chuck, all those sorts of things. I'm deciding to use that one just to start with. There's a little bit more security with a faceplate or faceplate ring. So that's where we're going to go. So we're going to add that one. Now don't forget, we're going to start by turning the outside of the bowl. So where the faceplate is, that's the center. So we can then take the screw holes away. But we're going to start by turning the outside. I'm using this 10mm or 3/8 bowl gouge. This is the Axminster premium range. That's a good size for this size of bowl as well. And in terms of lathe speed, we're going to be starting at around about sort of 11 to 1400 revs. That will change depending on the bowl size that you're working with. Recommendation really is to start at the lowest speed and slowly creep it up. We'll start by cleaning the outside edge, skimming the surface, creating the recess, shaping the bowl, sand the bowl, and put a finish on it. Haven't quite decided what finish we're going to put on it yet, so that'll evolve as we get into the piece. It's not going to be a salad bowl, fruit bowl. Could be something like a peanut or toffee dish. Being sapele, it's a nice dark timber, so I want to use a timber that's gonna show it off. So I think that's enough of me. We're not gonna focus on me anymore. We're gonna come in nice and close so you can see what's happening. Steph's behind the camera today, so Finley, Charlie and Vicky are all away. Craig's busy. Steph has stepped in at the last minute to help us out, so she's behind the camera. She's gonna bring it over now, and then she's gonna go and read a book for a minute. There we go. So lathe speed's at 0. I'm gonna put the light on, so I'm just gonna keep an eye on how much interference that's going to cause on the camera, and I think we're okay there. Right then, so lathe speed to 0 to start us off. Now my first job is to drop my handle down, and I'm just going to skim across the surface using the bottom edge of the bowl gouge, almost like a skew chisel really. So here we go. And the reason that I'm doing this, someone was asking me a little bit more information on how bowl gouges work, and I thought, well, let's do a series of bowls. We haven't really focused on that many bowls so far, so let's do a series. And we're starting off, like I said, between sort of 934, that is. If I go up any more, my machine starts to wobble around a little bit. I can turn it up a little bit more once I'm making the outside round, so once I've got rid of that undulation there. So here we go, we're going to start nice and gentle. I don't want to get bullied around, so I'm just going to take a nice gentle cut. And every cut you make is going to get easier and easier as you create a bigger flat area. Don't put too much pressure against the timber, because the timber will always push back and it will always be more aggressive and stronger than you are. So nice and gentle, take your time, absolutely no rush with this whatsoever. the other thing I would say about bowl turning, don't be sort of shackled. Don't be sort of shackled by the depth of the bowl. Say, for instance, we start shaping this. I don't want to have to be bound by the depth. If I think I've got a nice shape, but I haven't quite got to the top of the bowl here, I'll just turn that waste timber away. I don't want to have to use it all, but if I do, then it has to be for the sake of the design. I think we're nearly there. I'm just going to soften out a check. There we are. And I'm looking to get to a nice perfect round. There's the last remnants of the saw cut there. Now that's fine. I'll leave that because in the finishing cut we'll take that away. Okay, so now we can move that tool rest around to this surface and we'll get the tool rest in a position where it's nice and strong. I need to be below center, so if you turn by hand, pop a little pencil mark, you will always find center there. I need to be able to cut that point with the bowl gouge. And we're going to do a pull cut in this case now. So just nice and gentle, using the bottom of the gouge again, and just drag to there. That's perfect. Now what we have is a nice even bowl blank. Okay, this can be undulated, it can be torn, you can have turning marks, doesn't matter. That's not the finished surface of the bowl, but it's a true finish now. It's not undulating at all. So let's have a look at our dividers and working together with the speed sizer. Okay, so there's the speed sizer. You can make out all the holes there. So I'm using C-jaws and I'm going to expand into a recess. So I'm looking at the external side of my speed sizer and I'm going to look for C. Okay, position that there. This is fantastic. I've been wanting us to produce a chart for sizes for a long time. Now the speed sizers here, don't need it. It's got all my measurements for me. So that I can now directly position onto the bowl. There's my recess. Okay, so nice and easy. Ever so quick. Pop the speed sizer to one side. And now we're going to just cut the recess with a parting tool. And I would say for safety on your first bowl, go to about 6 mil, go to about 1/4 inch. You know, it doesn't matter, you know, you can have a slightly deeper recess for your first one, makes no odds. And now we're going to just skim away that waste. Remember, this is going to be a recess, so come away from what will be your good edge towards center. There we are. Let's turn the lathe speed up a little bit now. We can afford to do that. There we are. No undulation now, you see, because we've got it nice and even. So now what I'll do is create a nice little dovetail with the skew. There we are. If you want to put a little bit of decoration on the underside, feel free, do whatever you want. Use your decorating elf or spiraling tool. Pretty much your decision there. So there's the recess. That's what we're going to expand into in a minute. Now we can start thinking about taking away the excess timber. I'm going to start on the outside edge here. My bowl gouge has a 55-degree bevel angle, and all I'm doing is just pausing at the beginning, and then I'm not using my forward hand to push. I'm using my backhand, the handle hand, push up the length of the tool, and if the bevel's rubbing, your gouge is going to slide in the right direction. This hand is your brake. And there we are. I want to throw the recess up onto its own foot, so we're going to just create that little foot now. Just start pushing that timber away. There we are. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put my dust mask on, and I might even put the dust extractor on because we're getting a little bit dusty, so you're not going to hear me for a minute. But what I'll do is I'll stop everything once we've got the shape done, and we can discuss what's happened. So dust extractor's going on. My APF 10 is going to be on now just to protect myself. Before that, I had my spectacles on, so I'm always protecting my eyes, but now dust is in the air, I need to protect my lungs as well. Okay, there we are. We're ready to sand that. I haven't gone all the way up. I've just come slightly shy of the top by around about 12 mil, about half an inch. So I can carry on and sand this now. And I think I'm going to go with a paste wax as a finish. Let me just explain the abrasives that we're going to use. I'm going to start by doing some hand sanding. I'm going to start with a 100 grit. That's my go-to first stage. Then a 150. Then I'm going to go into a rotary sanding with a 180. Then 240 hand sanding, 240 rotary, and the same with then the 400. I'm just going to have a little stop there. I always like to check the end grain and see what's happening. Your problem areas are always going to be these two areas that are opposite each other, because that's where you're cutting against the grain. There's a little bit of white hazing here, and they're very small tears really, so I'm going to keep going with the 100 grit until we get rid of those, then we'll move on. There we are, so now the 180 on the rotary sander. So there we are. There's the sanded bowl, all nicely finished. So what we'll do now, we'll add a finish. So I'm going to start with the sanding sealer. This is cellulose-based sanding sealer. It's the chestnut version, and we're using it in a dilution of 50% thinners, cellulose thinners, and 50% cellulose sanding sealer. And that means that it soaks in a long way. It cuts through any oil or wax that you might have on the timber. And it dries ever so quickly as well because of all those thinners, or that percentage of thinners in there. So we're just going to lather it on, then we're going to wipe the surface, take off any excess, and then it'll dry really, really quick. Remember, I'm not going straight to the top. You might see some misses there. That's because we're going to take some of that bowl away at the top. So wipe off the excess before it dries, and that will get rid of any potential brush marks that might be there. And what this is doing, this is going to raise the grain of the bowl. So we're going to then very slightly, what we call denib, so a very gentle sand with a very fine abrasive. Now that grain's all risen up. It's a version of wet sanding, really. That's all we're doing. We're encouraging the grain to rise, and then it can never sort of stand back up again. Right, whilst that's drying, I'm just going to go and get some wax polish. I don't want to go anything too pale in terms of wax polishes, so we're going to go with either, let's have a look and see what I've got, either the clear, or I might even put a colour on. Let's go for a dark wax actually. I'm going to go for this one. So I'm going to show you. I've got two waxes. So if you're buying waxes and you've got a dark timber, go for the clear. Clear is slightly yellow, where neutral, if you look at neutral, that's white. It's sort of like a milk colour. So neutral would be good on the paler timbers, where the clear is good on your darker ones. Or if you want to go darker again, go for the actual wood colours. This particular one's a Victorian mahogany. These makes, by the way, these are Libron, but Hampshire Sheen and Chestnut they all do the same sort of thing, same type of waxes. I'm going to go for the darker one. And we're just going to pop that on with a rag in a minute. Let's just very lightly denib that now dry surface. It's brought up the grain, so it's a little bit rough there. So nice and slow with our speed. Just smoothing everything down. There we are. So that's nice and smooth. Now we can add the wax. There we go. That's the colour before we put it on. And I always like to put this on without the lathe running. You can make sure, if you do it this way, you make sure that it's actually gone deep into the grain, whereas if you do it with the lathe running, you're not really sure that it's actually just skipping over the surface. There we are, so that's got our full coverage. So let's just move the wax for the moment. And before I start buffing that, what I'll do is, with the shavings that we've just used, or we've just taken from the bowl, I'm just going to take away any excess wax. There we go. Then we can slightly raise the speed, clean bit of tissue, and do our buffing. So now we're getting the sheen. There we are. So this sapele, you get that real shimmer, that chatoyance as the light catches it. It's a really pretty bit of timber. All right, so nice and simple. This is our first bowl, remember. So what we'll do now, we'll take that one off the lathe. Okay, so you can see that nice shimmer there. Take that off the lathe. We'll get our chuck mounted. So remember the C-jaws, which we've sized. And the C-jaws, the area that we've sized, this is going to expand into the recess that we've made. It's got a dovetail on the outside of the jaw there. So it's a really secure way of holding your first bowl. And we're going to expand into that recess that we've made. And because we're just the right size, but that means we've got maximum surface contact. So again, making it a real secure hold. So now we'll get rid of our faceplate. Those screws out of the way a minute, and now we can start thinking about the inside. Now, one of the biggest problems here, potential issues here, would be going through the bottom of the bowl. So what I want to do is not from start to finish start thinking about depth. I'm going to start getting the first wall thickness done. Now remember, we're going to just take off about 1/2 inch of this bowl, so I'll start by doing that. Then I'm just going to start working on the wall thickness, then we'll go to depth. But once we've got our first wall thickness sorted, then we can start pinching for thickness all the way around. So the likelihood of going through the bottom is very low. Plus you could always put a center depth hole there as well to be extra sure. But let me show you how we're going to do this one. Lathe speed is 0. We've done a lot of changing on the lathe. Then slowly creep the speed up. I guess we can go back up to the same speed we had it, which was about 1400 revs. I'm going to put my face mask back on again, my airflow respirator. And to start with, we're just going to cut him down to size. Okay, so that's the depth down, so that's our final thickness. Now we can start hollowing. So we're going to start in the middle. I want my flute facing toward 2 o'clock, and we're going to pause the cut right at the beginning, because what I want to happen is a little ridge form for the bevel to lock into. So watch this. Extractor's going back on now. So what I'm doing there, let me just explain this cut whilst we're working it. Put my other glasses back on a second. Right at the beginning of the cut, let's get him a bit closer. Right at the beginning of the cut, I'm holding firm. My handle's over the other side of the lathe. Pause the cut, let the shoulder form. Now that shoulder's forming, I can now push up the length of the tool and let the chisel slide, bring the handle round and create the curve, and support with your forward hand. I'll just see if I can get this light in there a little bit better without bleaching everything. There we are. We'll do the same cut again. But now we're starting to get quite deep, so I'm not going to finish the cut, I'm just going to stop a little bit early. Same thing again. So I'm just going to check for thickness, and I'm fairly even there. I want to be even on this bowl. You don't always have to be, but I'm fairly even. And we don't need to go as thin as physically possible. That's going to be a nice thickness for this bowl. Remember, this is your first bowl. Now I'm going to start coming across the bottom. Just check the thickness again, make sure you know where everything is, and that's fine, happy with that. So let's finish off. Now I'm just going to check without looking. I just want to run my fingers across the bottom to see if there's any lumps and bumps, and actually I'm happy with that. We're going to leave that there. So there we are. So now we're back to our sanding again. We're going to keep the extractor on. Rid of the tool rest. So that's our bowl so far. Now, because we've thrown the recess up onto its own little foot in the way of that double curve, that's given me lots of scope to be able to run around the bottom without going anywhere near that recess. So it's not a flat bottom, it's a continuation of that curve and just blending in with the bevel as you get to square across that bottom. So now we're going to start sanding again. Your two problem areas are these. So we're going to do a little bit of coarse sanding, stop the lathe and have a check, and then we can start moving up through the grades again. If you want to, if you're finding things are getting really, really hot, then you can turn the lathe speed down. I'm going to keep it where it is for the minute, but like I say, if it's getting too hot or you're fearing that you might be cracking the timber, then drop your lathe speed. just having a look at those difficult areas. There is still a little bit of tearing, so we'll get rid of those. Turned away. Now we're on to 150 grit. So now 240 with the rotary. By hand. Now we're going to go 400 rotary and then 400 by hand. There we are, there's that one all sanded up, ready for the sanding sealer. Ready for the sanding sealer, and we'll give it a coat of our wax as well. So if you remember the sanding sealer, we're going to apply without the lathe running. Now be careful here, what we don't want to have is this sealer running down the back of the bowl, which is already waxed. So we're just going to, very carefully, just make sure that that's covered. And then I'm going to keep it running, or keep it turning rather, whilst I just take off the excess. And remember, we just want to leave that to dry and start raising the grain. Then we'll give it a very soft, gentle sand. And then we'll put some of our nice coloured wax on that, and that'll be that one done. So just give it so you want to wait a couple of minutes just to let it set. Sometimes because it soaks into the timber, if you start the lathe too prematurely, it will start throwing it out. It's like a big sponge basically. So just give it a little bit of time. Lathe speed down to 0. Just turn the machine on, just creep it round, and a very gentle touch. just taking away those fibres that have stood up. Take away the dust. Then we'll add our wax. If you remember, this is the mahogany colour. What was this? Victorian mahogany, this one. Okay. So again, enjoy this bit. Do it without the lathe running. See those lovely colours start to jump out. And your first bowl is quite an important piece. I've still got my, or rather my parents still have my first bowl when I was an apprentice. So it's worth keeping. You can see your progression, you can see your growth as a turner if you keep your first few pieces. There we are. So we're going to use some shavings again just to take off the excess. Don't worry about dusty shavings because of course wax won't stick. There we are, and then a bit of fresh tissue and we'll give it a buff. There we are. Right then, Steph, if you can bring that camera back, we'll get the bowl off the lathe. We'll have a look. Well, there we are, guys. That's our first bowl. We've got a little recessed base on it, so it just makes the job a little bit easier for you. Now, don't forget, this is the series of 4 bowl videos that I'm going to do, this one being the basic one. What I'd like to do for you next time is do a little toffee dish, but retain a foot. So rather than a recess, we're going to create a foot. Then after that, we're going to look at making a foot which will be sacrificial that we can take off, and then right on the last one we'll do some colouring as well. So hopefully a nice little series of bowl turning vids. But if you've just started, if you've just got your lathe, then good luck. Don't go too big too soon, but it's just a nice little simple bowl like that. And for me, that's it. I'll see you again next time, same place, 4 o'clock, my workshop. I've been Colwin Way. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.